Hello, friend. The mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Hello, friend.
Whoop, 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 whoop. Lunk alarm has been set off. Smokestack, you are lifting too aggressively in Planet Fitness. And you must tone it down, or you will be denied the free pizza that we have every Friday.
I'm lifting too aggressively.
You're lifting too aggressively. Brr, 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 lunk alarm. Do you know about the lunk alarm?
No, I don't. What does that mean?
Planet Fitness, the popular nationwide pseudo gym,
Yeah.
has a thing called the lunk alarm, where if you're behaving like a lunk, meaning you're dropping weights, you're grunting a lot,
Okay.
a big buzzer will sound in the building telling you to cut it out or get out, because they want it to be a safe space for people that are not very committed to their exercise.
So it's like a low testosterone gym.
Yeah, I'm not gonna hate on it because they don't. It's sort of a meme. They don't set off the lunk alarm near as often as people like to think.
Oh, okay. So
but it's mostly just a tool. It's a psychological tool to get soccer moms to sign up for their $10 a month thing.
Oh, right.
But see, here's the trick. This is why I'm talking about Planet Fitness. That Planet Fitness, like so many American businesses, their actual business is completely different from what it appears to be on the external side.
Oh, how so?
Well, front facing, you have to ask, front facing, it is a fitness clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But you got to keep in mind that your subscription gets you into any Planet Fitness across the nation. A.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
B, they have showers.
Mm-hmm.
And C, they give you free food every Friday. They have a free pizza party.
Wow.
Unlimited pizza. Mm-hmm. I think they still do that. Those three things together combine to make it the number one go-to thing that every homeless person living in their car gets is a Planet Fitness membership.
Really?
Yeah, because you go around from any city, you got a nice access to the shower, and you got a Friday pizza party. It's like, well, I live in my car, I don't have a shower, but for $10 a month, any city I go to that's reasonably sized will have a Planet Fitness, and I'll have a nice shower facility.
So how many people that you see in a Planet Fitness aren't there to work out, but are just there for the shower?
I estimate 30%.
Wow. Okay.
I mean,
van life people.
I made that up totally.
Okay.
But a sizable number of people just seem to walk in, shower, hang out, like, oh, I'm not living in a car for a minute. And maybe they'll even do some exercise. It's good for the homeless community.
Right. Well, if you live in your car, there's not a lot of space to move around. You don't get a...
So some of them probably actually use it for exercise too. So Planet Fitness is one of those crypto businesses, like so many businesses that are, I've told you about, we've talked about the art scheme.
Oh yeah.
The modern art scheme. That's a big scam.
Yep.
And most of the world is a scam. Like my business, one of my many businesses, is ostensibly on paper to make sure various kinds of medical equipment are safe, right? Mm-hmm. But in practice, it is to assuage the emotions of middle-aged women that are scared they're doing something wrong.
Really?
Yeah, I mean that's the main thing. I go and I say, "Oh, it's fine. It's gonna be fine. It's fine." And they say, "Here, have some money to come back and tell me that next week."
So are these women operating the equipment?
Well, they're just managers.
Okay.
A lot of women have unfortunately been promoted to the position of middle manager in America.
Right.
There's a lot of stress with that they don't really want.
Mm-hmm.
And they just really want to pay a man to come and tell them it's okay.
That's your job.
And that's if you actually ask what I spend most of my time doing, it's like, oh, you have a problem? Let me come look at that. Oh, it's probably going to be fine. It's probably going to be just fine. And then that's just, and I supposedly have some, quote, expertise that allows me to say that. But the truth of the matter is it's almost always fine because,
So how much of your job is actual
I myself
physics?
am like a Planet Fitness. I'm like a roving Planet Fitness, just providing showers to women whose emotions are just become too dirty. Emotional, metaphysical
And you just
showers.
come in there and clean them off.
Yeah.
With your strong male presence and confidence.
That's right. Another good place to shower while on the road for everyone. I know a lot of people lately have become homeless.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you some homeless tips.
Okay.
One, the Planet Fitness thing is good. You get pizza every Friday and you shower. But two, truck stops, Flying J and stuff, you can shower for the last time I did it, now it's been a minute.
Mm-hmm.
It was like $7 for a shower. Not bad.
Yeah.
And they clean it well. A lot of people hear that and they say, I don't want to shower. It's a private booth. It's not like a prison shower where you get a private locking door with a shower in it, a little place to change, and they clean it meticulously after everyone. It's great. But number one, if you're going to be recently homeless, congratulations, because you've done the collapse now and avoid the rush thing. So you're ready. Because when the zombie apocalypse comes, you won't be worried about your house. You're ready.
Right.
You're ready to move. Right.
You went
there's
straight
some advantages to this.
Cormac McCarthy, the road.
Right.
Get your shopping cart.
It's not all bad news.
Okay.
But number one, you want to still keep your car if at all possible. The difference between being homeless with a car and being homeless without a car, night and day.
Okay.
Night and day. Because if you have a place you can go to you can lock stuff in it, and you can sleep in there and cover the windows and lock them. Mm. You're like king of the homeless if you have a car.
Right.
Especially if you have an SUV or a van or a big car. Mm-hmm. And then two, if your car's a little small. So your car's a little small, right? It's too small to slam. Get you a cheap, you can get it for like $3,000 used. A cheap pull-behind trailer.
Mm.
You can save up and get from your panhandling money or from selling all the stuff from your house. And that having an extra little bedroom, just treating it like your bedroom. Like I drive the car during the day, but at night I go to the bedroom. Totally change your.
Wow. So you set up the trailer as a living space.
Right. The trailer's a living space. And then your workspace, your day-to-day space is your car. And I know the parks are currently closed in a lot of places, but most states will have several parks which are de facto gypsy camps.
Okay.
They will say on the sign, no camping for more than 21 days. Oh, but everyone there camps for way more than 21 days.
Okay.
Like, because I've even, one of the ways you tell is you first go there and when you pull in, if people have set up like their family name on a sign nailed to a tree, mm-hmm. that means they've been camping there a minute.
Okay. Gotcha.
Right. If the school bus comes around to the campsite.
Really?
That means, oh, yeah. That means they've been camping there a minute. Right.
They'll send the bus. Wow.
They'll send the bus. They'll send the bus out to the campsite. They do. Not everywhere, obviously. This has to be like the mayor knows. Mm-hmm. Right. And he, and a lot of mayors are cool and they know that a lot of people are struggling. So they're like, yeah, I get, just park your RV there a while, man,
Right.
So there's all kind of signs. There's all kind of literal signs, mm-hmm. like do not camp here. And then there's the real one that's like an oak tree with its sign that says the Smiths on it. And so those are two separate signs that tell you what's really going on.
Okay.
Just
this
like
is good
Fitness.
info.
The real business of the park is different than the stated business of the park.
Right.
It's true of everything. It's true of everybody. It's true of America. I was perusing my collection of historical obscure U.S. flags recently.
You have a collection of flags.
A collection of flags. And I was trying to decide, like, which one should I fly from
Mm-hmm.
the back of the van as like our new maps battle standard, or should we take one and modify it slightly?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have your main flag, which is our pyramid with the eye crossed out. That's
Right.
like your country flag, but you need
Yep.
battle standards too,
Right.
because you can't just have, it's like everyone confuses them. Like the Confederate flag, the thing everyone calls the Confederate flag,
Yeah.
wasn't even the flag of the Confederacy.
Nope.
It was a battle flag.
So Robert E. Lee's battle flag for
Yeah.
Virginia Army. Yeah.
Right. It wasn't even of the Confederate States. So that's what we need. Is we need some various battle standard flags. And I was looking in my collection for. I really sort of like the New York Naval Ensign of the 1770s.
Which is?
It's a white flag with a black beaver on it.
That's a good one. Yeah.
It's just a crudely drawn black beaver with like some lines on him to indicate the direction of his fur.
Okay.
And he's like standing on maybe a pile of sticks, but it's very. It could just be a pile of straw. It could just be a shadow. It's very low rendered. Flag.
Does it say "Don't make a hat out of me" underneath it?
No, but it's we could with a beaver. Don't tread on. That'd be fun.
Okay,
No,
we'll do that.
it was just. I think what happened was the New York Army was one of the first ones to repel the British because they had a large population.
Right.
And I believe what happened, if I remember, is they took down the British flag, but they didn't have any other flag ready to go because this was sort of like an impromptu thing. So someone just drew a picture of a beaver, which was like, it was a symbol of New England settlers because they did a lot of fur trapping, I guess.
Okay.
And then they just drew it on a white sheet and raised that up. And I'm like, here you go.
It works.
And that became sort of a naval ensign after that,
Cool.
So I like that one. Of course, the Gadsden flag, which is the yellow "Don't tread on me" with the snake thing. Everyone knows now. The Libertarians have taken that one.
Yeah.
The town sort of lost its original
They kind of wrecked
punch
it
by being over memed. I like the now. I've got also the pine tree flag.
Yeah, that's a good one. An
That's
appeal
a good one.
appeal
It's
to heaven.
An appeal to heaven.
Yeah.
It's a nice one. I thought we could do. I saw one of those. Owen Cyclops friend. He has made a T-shirt of that. It says "An appeal to heaven," but with a pine tree and nice like '80s synthwave colors.
His apparel is really on point.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. So we could do that. We could do something riffing off the pine tree flag. The appeal to heaven thing. That's what George Washington flew under that flag, or in his Navy.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
And if you guys don't know, an appeal to heaven. This was back when people used to put like phrases of philosophers on their flags. When's the last time we did that?
We had real culture then.
Yeah, man. And it was like that comes from John Locke. He was that was from an earlier time they overthrew a king. Maybe King James. I don't remember. James II. Anyway, and John Locke justified it after the fact because one of the main things philosophy exists for is to justify your revolution 20 years after it happened.
Okay.
Historically, that's one of the main reasons is like, yeah, well, we did kill the king and like hang a bunch of people. Why did we do that? And the real reason is like, well, we were really angry.
So if philosophers are well paid in your society, that means you still got some things that need explaining.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we've still got some things. A society at peace with itself doesn't have room for many philosophers.
Gotcha.
Like that's why the Greeks had so many philosophers because they were constantly going to war with each other, and they were constantly thinking about why do we have so much sodomy, and they were like, and also just plain curiosity of like, look, because reading Aristotle is so fascinating, because like he knows that the Greek gods don't make any sense. But he also doesn't have any good replacement for them. He's like, I don't know why the sea comes in every night.
Right.
And goes back out. But it's silly that it's like Titans wrestling in the ocean or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, appeal to heaven flag. That was John Locke. He was like, look, when you no longer have any appeal to civil authorities for the injustices, you have an appeal to heaven.
Yep.
By which he meant, and now we go a-killing.
We go take up arms.
We take up arms, which is not wrong in practice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's if your government's treating you that badly at some point, sure. But I'm still, this is a controversial American take. I'm still not sure that King George was treating America that terribly at the time.
Yeah, I mean, really, with the stuff we put up with now, I mean, cakewalk.
Yeah, it was just like high-ish taxes on tea.
Yeah.
And I guess they really like tea.
I know, but still, give me a break.
I mean, maybe America's coders and IT people would revolt if like coffee was really expensive. Maybe it's a similar thing.
Well, no, so okay, later we're gonna talk about culture.
Yeah.
But the colonists had a different culture than
Totally.
And so when it's one culture, a foreign culture imposing its will upon your culture, a little tax on tea seems a lot more bogus. The thing that the American tax system has got figured out is we got to make sure everybody feels like we're paying taxes to ourselves.
Yeah.
And then
but really you're not.
And no, you're not. But that's the scam. And so then that's why we put up with that. But King George, we threw all his tea in the harbor, right?
Right.
That's the difference.
We threw all his tea in the river of discontents.
That's it.
Right. Who wrote that thing? That wasn't Thomas Paine. I get all my other. Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense, and someone else did he write? Was that a phrase in there by River of Discontents? I don't remember.
I don't know.
Anyway, and then I have the flag of the Green Mountain Boys. It's a great flag. One of my favorites, really, because it's so ugly. Imagine the U.S. flag, okay, the United States flag today.
Yep.
But where the red and white are, the red and white stripes, is just sort of like a moss green.
Okay.
No stripes, just green.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's still a blue field with stars in it, but the stars are just thrown in there haphazardly. Like, no, they're not they're not snapped to grid.
Okay.
Right? They're just sort of like someone just sprinkled some stars on there and said, it's good. Right? The Green Mountain Boys, no one teaches American history anymore because I bet no one's ever heard of them.
I've never heard of them.
So originally, what is now Vermont was part of what was then New Hampshire, big New Hampshire. And then this is a reason that this is maybe to counteract my first statement. This is about King George not being that bad.
Okay.
Is that then the crown gave part of that New Hampshire to New York. And New York would not respect any of the titles or land holdings or like city boundaries that had been set up in this other half of New Hampshire. And so the Green Mountain Boys started as a militia of only a few hundred people in New England, in this part of New Hampshire that was given over. Who just anytime the New Yorkers came in to do anything, they would just shoot them. And they said, "This is our place now." And then that became Vermont.
Awesome.
The Green Mountain Boys. That's how Vermont was started. And I like that as a symbol of like even today, like resisting the tyranny of New York.
Yeah.
Like back off, New York.
That's something I can get behind.
We're Vermont. And now here's the thing. I do think God fights for noble causes. And the Green Mountain Boys had great success when that's all they were doing.
Right.
Was fending off this weird takeover of New York. But then they got so successful, they got a little cocky and tried to capture Montreal.
Come on, guys.
And then they were captured, and you can't do look, God stops fighting for your cause when you go beyond the just things and are like, well, we did that, but we're sort of bored. What should we do now? I guess we'll go try to capture Montreal.
That's the thing about armies. They have to stay fed even after the mission is accomplished.
Right. Or disband. And they didn't want to disband, so then you have to make up a new target.
Yeah, nobody actually disbands an army.
Do we have any beef with Montreal? Yeah. Those, they're just growling for no reason.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. I really like the Green Mountain Boys flag, both because of its ugliness and because I think the Vermont National Guard still uses it as their flag.
Awesome.
Not sure though.
Well, I'm a Southern boy, but I've always had a soft spot for Vermont, and I guess that's the reason right there.
Yeah,
Our common
have
hatred of New York.
good maple syrup.
Yeah, yeah.
Then I got my "Come and Take It" flag.
Oh, that's classic. Yeah.
Yeah, the one with the cannon on it.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's another good one that has applications to today, because the "Come and Take It" flag is a white flag with a cannon on it, a crudely drawn cannon, and it says "Come and Take It" at the bottom. And that was from the Mexican state trying to take a cannon away from a settlement in Mexican Texas.
This was the Alamo, wasn't it?
No,
it wasn't.
This was what was this? It was some colony that I don't remember the name of. Anyway, it was a colony in Texas, and what had happened was the much like today, the Mexican government was like, hey, we got this land out here. We could really use some immigrants to come and farm it.
Mm-hmm.
But where are we going to get them? And the United States was like, hey, look, we got these Catholics. And we're not thrilled about them. And the Mexicans were like, well, we're Catholic. We'll take them.
There you go.
And so the Mexicans said, they invited a bunch of white settlers out to Mexican Texas, and they said, look, here you go. You got to be Catholic like us, though, and you can stay there. And then there was this one colony, and I think it was right on what is now the Texas-Mexican border. I think it was real close to there.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this fellow there. He's named after one of the counties in Texas now, or I should say the county's named after him. I think his name was DeWitt. Mm-hmm. But anyway, DeWitt was like, hey, Mexican government, hey, President Gonzalez or whoever it was. President Jorge, can I please have a cannon to defend our little settlement against Indians?
Okay.
Because the Mexicans also had trouble with the northern, because the Mexicans are sort of Native Americans, but the more northern, like Nevada, New Mexico, Dakotas, Indians didn't get along with them either.
Right.
And so they're like, can we have some support? And all the Mexicans sent in return was a small bronze cannon.
Okay.
And they put it on a swivel mount in this building, this little fort, gun house in the settlement. And then the people they'd given that bronze cannon to decided they were going to secede from Mexico, which is a little bit of a stabby in the backy. The Mexicans invited you over. It's like the reverse of what's happening now. The Mexicans were like, come on over here, white people. And the white people did. And then they got so numerous, they were like, we don't want to be part of Mexico anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they used all the things the Mexicans had given them against them. Mm-hmm. And so the Mexicans have some, legit historical grievances here because then the Mexican government said, well, go take the cannon back if they're going to do that, you know. And then the settlers made a big, they fought them off using that cannon in part. And then they made a big flag about it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Stick it to them.
You're like, you gave us this cannon. Now you want it back? No. So a lot of good flags to choose from for our battle standard. I haven't decided. Maybe the Commissioner of Fisheries flag, which is the blue flag with a white fish on it. But I don't know.
There's that.
There's a lot of there's the fisheries. The United States Bureau of Fisheries have had all kinds of flags.
Why don't we combine them? Let's do a Green Mountain Boys flag and stick a beaver and a cannon on it.
Oh, that'd be good. And just sort of all together, and it says, "Don't make a hat out of me."
Yeah. Yeah. The beaver can be manning the cannon, to defend himself.
That would be a good flag. And that would be it would sort of have everything in it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it?
Maybe one of our intrepid listeners can design this flag for us and send us a mock-up. I got in an argument with some of our intrepid listeners.
No hate.
Okay.
It's only love. It's a love argument.
Tell us about your love argument.
Well, this week I had two tweets
Mm-hmm.
that were really sort of, they accumulated fire.
Uh-huh.
One accumulated more praise,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one accumulated what I would call as fire. So the one that got me fire was, and they're both related. I realized the common theme going on here was that things, the stated, again, just like Planet Fitness, the stated thing was not the real thing.
Okay.
I was accidentally exposing to either the delight or the chagrin of whoever it was, the real thing behind the fake thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the one that made people angry was there were people going on, and they were both related to the same thing. It was this, there were all these protests about open up the state or whatever.
Right.
And I noticed that so many of the responses to this were some white person saying, "Oh, please let everyone know we're not all like that.
Mm-hmm.
We're not. Well, that doesn't represent all of us. We aren't all ignorant and dumb."
Right. I'm a good white, not a bad white.
I'm a good white, not a bad white. And then this guy was like, "Look at these guys protesting to go back and slave away at their jobs, and I'd say, and give up their." And I was like, his point was like, they're making more on minimum wage now, or on unemployment now, than they were at their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So why do they want to go back? And I was like, that's not true. Blue collar guys make good money often.
Right. Yeah.
And then that was this whole like, no, they don't. These guys, like, the idea that these people were not living in trailers, just hand to mouth,
right,
set lots of people off. And that was because there was two reasons. One is a lot of people wanted to continue the closures just because they don't want to go back to work.
So wait. Hold up.
Yeah.
So cosmopolitans were giving you grief because you were stating that these blue collar guys probably make a decent living and want to go back to it.
Right.
That's kind of stupid.
It was stupid, but I understand why. Because it was just basically, they didn't want to be like wagey, go back to cagey.
Right.
Right. I mean, a lot of work in America is soul crushing and makes you want to die.
The cosmopolitan work, yeah.
Yeah. And these people didn't want to go back to that. And so to justify that, they'd invented a narrative where, and I quote, everyone protesting is either been memed into protesting by Alex Jones, or is a landlord. Like, that's what they said. And I was like, that's not, how many landlords do you think there are? And I was like, they're not. And then he was like, all the blue collar people that actually do something are essential and they're there. I was like, that's not true. There's a lot of blue collar jobs that have seen a lot of reduced demand.
Yeah.
From this, but all of this could not be heard because the prospect of going back to a soul crushing existence of working in a cubicle,
right,
was so terrible that the mythology of what is going on had to be twisted.
This is so. I'm gonna try to limit my ripping on cosmopolitans, but that is such a cosmopolitan take. It's like, okay, my life sucks, but I can't cop to it. So therefore, I'm going to make the entire country wrap itself around this weird, twisted myth about my life and how good it is, or something.
Yes.
Something. It's everybody else's life in far off places that I've never met. I'm going to impose my mythology upon them, and if they dare deviate from that, they are psycho rednecks. They're insane or stupid or whatever. I'm going to just be frothing at the mouth furious that these people dare defy the narrative that keeps me getting up every day.
Yes.
That's what's going on.
To put it.
That's exactly what's going on. It's pathetic.
It is pathetic, but lots of different people do similar.
Yeah.
In different ways. But
yeah, that's
so
true.
I can't look, I'm not hating on them too much because I like going to work in the cubicle is awful.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Right. So
I've done that job.
perfectly legitimate grievance, but
Right.
you got to be honest about what's happening. And then the other thing, because this all started because I noticed what was trending on the Twitter was, how did they say it? Pencil-tucky or something?
Yeah,
It didn't even fit well.
Western Pennsylvania is called Pennsyltucky.
Yeah, it doesn't even fit well. And there was like all these rednecks from Pencil-tucky.
Mm-hmm.
And the main thing was that I realized the main thing that a cosmopolitan is concerned about, a white cosmopolitan, is not being lumped in with rednecks.
Yeah, it's the whole whose argument is this? Good whites versus bad whites. Is that Moldbug? Who is that?
Moldbug.
It might be Steve Saylor. I don't know. I'll figure out who came up with that.
Moldbug looks great in a leather jacket.
Yeah, yeah.
With his long hair.
He's rocking it. Yeah.
It's like, but yeah, it's like it's and what it is it's middle class anxiety.
Yeah.
This is all SJWism, is middle class anxiety, which is like, look, I know that I'm never going to make the kind of money to put me in the upper class.
Right.
And I'm sort of terrified of losing my job and becoming lower class, aka a redneck.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the way that I will make sure no one puts me in that class is I will hate both the rich and the poor.
Yeah.
Which is what they do. Because they say, on the rich side, they say, I am more moral than the yes, I do not have socioeconomic status, but I have moral status over them.
Yes.
Because look at all my virtues. They are so greedy and evil.
Yeah.
And they want to destroy the environment.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, almost all these people, they pass a homeless person, they never give him $1.
Yeah.
You know, it's like then you're calling this rich guy greedy. If you had the capacity, you do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, they're like, and I'm also not stupid like all these poor people.
Oh yeah.
It's to say, it's like so. But you know, that's the middle class forever. I've heard, and I think it's probably true, that one of the problems we're experiencing is the middle class got so big in America that then we became a country about middle class values, which is just about how signaling you how good you are, without any skin in the game about it. Mm-hmm. You know, which is who knows?
Yeah,
who knows? I'm just a Planet Fitness peddler.
So what was the other thing you got in trouble for on Twitter?
Well, I mixed them both there. I said almost all of white America's political social game is about trying to prove they're not part of the, quote, rednecks that are, quote, over there.
Right.
And they feel constant anxiety about being cast as such as others. It's summed up in, I listen to NPR. Yeah. I'm one of the smart ones.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was totally on point.
Yeah, it is. It's just this masquerade. Like Planet Fitness wears a mask. It's like we're a gym, but actually we're a homeless shelter. Mm-hmm. And I wear a mask like, I help ensure the safety of various things, but actually I just console hysterical women. And then other people wear a mask like, actually I'm very smart. I listen to the NPR, but actually inside I'm terribly terrified that I'm going to be cast into the lower class at any possible moment.
Yeah. I've been there. I've worked that job, that totally unsatisfying desk job that just gives you all sorts of ennui, you know? Yeah. You got to cope with it somehow.
I guess that's why, person comes from persona, which was the Greek that was the name for the mask you would wear in the Greek play.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? It's so to be a genuine person is to be a genuine fake. Because persona means mask.
Is that like fake it till you make it kind of thing?
Well, it's just like your persona. A person is a mask is a persona, a mask that people are wearing outwardly. Mm-hmm. But their inward thing is always different.
I gotcha.
Just like Planet Fitness.
Okay. So
Planet Fitness is how you understand America.
Before we start the next time, I saw you picking up a book, but I want to ask you a question.
Uh-huh.
How does one enjoy Twitter?
That's the thing about Twitter.
You've
recently been trying to do it.
I've joined. I have an account. I've been trying to make comments and things, and I find that I enjoyed it a lot more when I was lurking on Twitter without an account, and I just bookmark all the people I like, and I would just check them every now and again and read their funny stuff. But now I don't know. The thrill is gone. I'm wondering how do I enjoy it? How do I derive any
Well,
pleasure
here's
from
the
this?
thing. Here's what makes Twitter good and bad.
Okay.
Is that like, so you got your book of faces, you got your Facebooks.
Mm-hmm.
And you sign onto there, and then you instantly have a lot of people that you know
Mm-hmm.
from real life.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about regular real life stuff. Of course, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I get on there and talk about how the world population is fake.
Right.
And there's actually only 2 billion people. But I just made that's an extreme. But
Okay.
there's more stated people than there's actual people. Let me just say that.
All right, we'll have to talk about that.
We'll talk about that
Okay.
later. But anyway, but see, and you get on Instagram, maybe, and then you take pictures of your food, or maybe seductively of your butt, right?
Yeah.
And then you get a lot of people liking that,
right?
because people like food and butts.
Sure.
You know,
who doesn't?
Yeah, and then all of these various social medias, but Twitter is like a grind of pain. Because you sign on, and unless you're a mega famous person, you have 0 friends at the start.
Right.
No one follows you at all. And you don't get a lot of followers for like 7 years.
Okay.
You just sit there and you grind and you talk to people, and then all people care about is if you state an opinion is attacking it. Because you can be completely anonymous on there, and it makes people feel good to attack you and then have all their friends pile on top of you.
I can't even get attacked.
Yeah, that's the thing. Mostly you're just ignored.
Yeah. I'm
And
just
that's
tweeting
true
into the
even-
void, you know.
Even of the biggest accounts, most of what they say, they just get ignored. And so it's like that's why Twitter hones your spirit, the samurai spirit. Because the prevailing thing of Twitter is A, no one cares, and B, they want to kill you if they do care.
Okay, so really, I'm on Twitter in order to just harden myself up.
Yeah, but then you start to enjoy it.
Okay.
Because then you start to think like, well, I'm just gonna tweet whatever's in my mind at the moment, and I don't care about what anyone thinks about it. Like on Facebook, everyone tries to make something they think people will like, but on Twitter, you just bleh. And then see if someone likes it or not. And it doesn't matter because, momento nemo curious.
Meaning?
Which is, remember, nobody cares.
Is that the motto of Twitter?
It's not my personal motto. Like there's memento mori, which is remember death. Momento nemo curious, which is remember, nobody cares. Okay. Which is a good life motto because most people, people get so worried about stuff, but mostly most people are not thinking about you at all. Right. People are like true. So wrapped up like, what will people think? What will they? I want to fit in, and mostly people don't think about you ever. Right.
No, I tell my family this sometimes. If they're worried about an encounter they had with somebody. And my response 9 times out of 10 is they probably haven't thought about it since the moment it happened. Right. And it's 9 times out of 10 it's true.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. People that's why, like sometimes I'll walk around and I'll get out the campground wearing my kimono or whatever. And I used to be like, I don't want people to think of me as the crazy person. Yeah. But then I realized most people didn't even notice. Right. And that's how you live your life. That's how you live your life.
Wearing my respirator to the nasty post office has helped me with this.
Yeah, there's a great, just wearing insane clothing in public is a great way. That's probably why drag queens and cross-dressers are so bold.
Right, you have to break through that wall.
You have to just own it if you're going to do something that crazy. And so the way you can do it without being weird is you can wear maybe some piece out of a different time period. You can just tremendously appropriate some other culture, like wear a Native American headdress. And
that'd be rad. I'm gonna go that route.
Yeah, be shirtless, walk around, and be like, I am Chief Two Bears. I know a fella, or knew a fella named Two Bears. His last name was Two Bears, and that was a great name.
It's pretty rad, man.
Yeah, he was like John Two Bears. And I think his grandfather was like a real Native American named Two Bears.
Right.
And that had become his surname. But now he was super white. But anyway, because it had been like 3 or 4 generations, but he still had this surname.
Dude, if I could have that last name, I would totally keep it.
Yeah, like John Two Bears.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, he said it was a little difficult on forums because most people don't have a space in their name.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, okay. Yeah, so anyway.
Well, we're talking about, we've mentioned culture a few times. I feel like it's a good time.
What would you say?
Oh, good.
You do here.
I have people skills.
We have people skills.
I feel like it's a good time to talk about making your own culture.
Ooh, let's make our own culture.
And there's a kind of a fundamental choice that I want to introduce to the audience, is that if you're not participating in the generation of your own culture, then the internet is going to give you its culture.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the internet is not a spontaneously arising community culture.
No.
But it is dictated to the people of the internet by the Jews. No, just kidding. By the technocrats. Okay.
Yes.
The Jeff Bezoses of the world.
It's a great meme to just say.
Yeah.
One of the weird things is thinking that the Jews control everything, like micromanage. It's
right.
Such a weird. It's like, oh, who does that? Is the Jews?
It's like there's a committee of them.
He's sitting there in his bar mitzvah, like, ha ha.
But no. So there's an opportunity for everyone to greatly increase the quality of their life, and then if you have a family, the environment in which you raise your family, and greatly increase the outcomes for your children by creating your own culture rather than having the internet /media /education system now give you its manufactured culture.
Yes.
And so what I mean by culture is it's the shared ways of living that necessarily arrive from shared beliefs, and then the teaching of those beliefs to the next generation. So it's sort of the beliefs inform the living, inform the beliefs, back and forth cycle of living in belief. Okay.
Well, the root word of culture is cult.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it's this lifestyle of the cult.
And the belief system that informs it.
Yeah.
So right, it's this functioning living thing, and it, for most of human history, it was kind of taken for granted that everybody that you lived with, that you worked with, unless you were a merchant or some traveling somebody, you all have the same culture. You basically believe the same things. You're going to teach your children the same things, more or less. Right. And now in the age of technology, and multiculturalism, that's all up for grabs. And that's a very disruptive thing to have going on in your life. And I think we just take it for granted how disruptive it can be, especially for a young person coming up. Because say you were raised, out in the country, you knew your neighbors, you guys all had the same basic belief system. And I think philosophy and religious faith sort of make up that belief system. Yeah. Or at least 90% of it. And you were raised in a culture or a subculture that was more or less cohesive. You worked on projects together. You took care of those in need together within the culture. You looked out for each other. If you were over at your friend's house as a kid, their parents would respond to your behavior in a similar way to the way your parents respond to your behavior, with allowances being made for the fact that they're not your parents. That sort of thing. Okay? Right. If you're in sort of this cosmopolitan environment or a multicultural environment, where your neighbors are from Kirkplakistan or whatever, if your kids are over at their house, you don't know how they're going to react to your child's behavior because you don't share a culture with them. Right? And so you've put your family at a great disadvantage, your children at a great disadvantage, and they're missing out on a lot of things that I think many people in America don't even know that they can have. They don't know the benefits of this. And I'm not doing any kind of cultural supremacy kind of stuff. I'm just, any culture can count in this discussion here.
Right.
You just have to have one. And
Right.
multiculturalism is not a culture. It is the negation of a culture. So the first point, I guess, is if you're not for creating your own culture, if you're not a part of one and helping to create it, someone else is going to do it for you through media, education, and the internet. Now, you cannot create your own culture on the internet. If you're part of some clique, on the internet, that's a LARP, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't carry off into the rest of your life. It doesn't carry itself off onto your children. The rest of your family doesn't participate. It may be a culture, but it's sort of a part-time LARP culture. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
And the degree to which you live and work with those with whom you share these beliefs is the degree to which you will be able to create and maintain a culture. So you need to be living and working and spending time with the people with whom you share these belief systems as much as you can. Because the more you do it, the more culture creation power you're going to have. And then, of course, you can have subcultures forming, right? Which I would say internet cliques are subcultures of internet culture. And they can have their own distinct stuff. But where it really counts, they're going to be harmonious with the higher order of culture. Okay? And so then that necessarily limits what sort of cultures can occur on the internet anyway. And any culture is going to necessarily limit what sorts of subcultures can operate within it. So, for example, if you're at like little traditional white bread exurb town, in the 50s, you can have like the band, right? The band has its own culture.
Yeah.
You go to
like you're in the greaser socks or whatever.
Yeah, you have your own subculture. You have your own stuff. You wear your band uniform on Fridays or whatever. That's a subculture, okay? But it's gonna jive with the overarching culture. A different subculture, say, if you're into death metal and cutting yourself, and maybe cutting
Who
other
isn't?
people,
Right.
that's not gonna. You're creating a new culture at that point if you're not more or less harmonious with the higher level of culture.
And that's probably shown by the infinite fractalness of metal.
Yeah.
It's like, I like that death metal band, and then someone in a weird t-shirt with a skull on it comes screaming at you, "That's not death metal, that's pungent foot metal." Or something, or whatever, some ridiculous subgenre of the subgenre of metal.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Well, metal's interesting because if metalheads, if they see each other at a distance out in Texas or Alabama or something, they're gonna be like, "You're my bro," right?
Right.
But you get enough metalheads in a room together, and they're all gonna fracture and argue with each other about what subgenres count as real metal. So it's scalar, how cohesive metal culture is.
Sweaty armpit metal sucks.
Yeah.
It's actually actually like jump on a corpse metal that is best.
Right. But I think that's
not that one. The Swedish jump on a corpse metal is actually.
But that is probably a symptom of the overarching belief structure of screw the prevailing. It's a counterculture.
Just whatever is prevailing, hate it.
Yeah.
And then make up.
And so that behavior scales, in intensity and who you're reacting against, depending on what your concentration is, cultural concentration. Right. So they're sort of creating cultures. Okay. Some benefits of culture. Okay. You're going to have the trust and affection of the people that you spend your time with outside of your family. So you're taking some of that familial trust and affection and expanding it out into the people around you. There's a lot of good people doing some very good commentary about social trust levels and the benefits of having a basic level of trust with the people you spend most of your time with. That does not happen in a multicultural society. And I'm not talking about ethnicity here. I'm talking about belief systems.
Right.
So, and when you have that trust and affection for the people around you, you have spontaneous things like sharing, okay, without the government coming in and saying, we mandate that you must share with this person because of this grievance or whatever. You just do it. You care for the weak and needy among you. And if you happen to be weak and needy, you get cared for. I'll refer to the subculture of the street that I live on, which has really been cool over the last few years. Enough people have moved onto this street with similar belief systems where this culture that wasn't there before, our street had zero culture before.
Mm-hmm.
And now I would say a good 60% of the street is participating in some way of the spontaneously arising culture of my street, to the point where now the cultural leadership families are working together to take care of like the little old ladies and the people that are infirm on our street or that sort of, those sorts of things are just spontaneously happening because we share this culture.
Right.
Okay. You work on
Americans are not actually as selfish as they appear. They just don't have any social structure through which to channel their charity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because you can't, all those good things don't really happen when you're only talking about one person or one family unit.
Right. And also a big part of it is moving.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to form a culture if every 2 years the house next to you is occupied by different people.
It is. And that's, you know, post-industrial nomadic lifestyle,
right?
Where everybody's moving on up, shuffling all over the country. No, that you're exactly right about that. But when you have this, you're working together to create and achieve things. You're making your own art. Okay. You're raising your kids in a consistent and safe environment where they're gonna learn your beliefs and values, and philosophy. That's gonna get passed on to them. And you can't. It's a lot harder to pass on your beliefs and values to your children if they're not growing up in a culture where those things are practiced family to family.
Right.
If you're just an island doing this on your own, like the modern nomad, that's a lot tougher. Right. To get your children, your children are gonna adopt the internet metaculture a lot more easily. So if you decide that you want to start building culture, here's what you got to do. And a lot of this is a big ask.
Okay, what do I do?
These are not easy. First thing you got to do,
a flag with a beaver on it.
I mean, it could, yeah. Okay. But really, you need to decide what you really believe about yourself, about humankind, about values. So we're talking about faith and philosophy. Okay. Mm-hmm. You got to sort that out. Second thing you got to do is physically put yourself in work and leisure with others who believe the same things. And the internet doesn't count here. The internet is LARPing. Mm-hmm. It does not count. Okay.
Can we do internet meetups and meet in the meet space? Would that count?
It's unless you can
and
do it
all move onto the same street together.
Yes. Once you're actually once everybody actually gets together and stays there, then it becomes real. Then you can actually create real culture.
Once we have our caravan of vans in the Midwest,
right?
The maps culture will be realized.
One of the dead giveaways of a culture is that children grow up together.
Yeah.
If that's not able to happen, then you don't have a real culture.
Right.
So you get with those people and you spend your time with them. And then you start doing things with these people, okay? Prepare and eat food. All right? Big one. Icebreaker right there. Have a cookout, okay?
Right.
And all this stuff is just like, oh, this is just normal suburban stuff, but what I'm trying to illustrate is the culture creative power and the reason that people do these things in these environments and in these cultures and subcultures, like the street I live on. There's power in this stuff. Have fun together. Okay?
Right.
Just do something fun. And if you believe the same basic things about philosophy and faith, you're going to be able to find fun things to do together. But if you don't believe those things with each other, it's going to be really hard for you to find something fun to do. Okay?
Now, how do you feel about syncretizing cultures? Is that possible?
Meaning what? What do you mean?
Well, like, let's say you live on a street and like half your neighbors celebrate Diwali. Mm-hmm. Like, can we have a Diwali merger with, I don't know, van life?
Yeah,
or whatever it is we're doing. Like, how How do you, like, let's say you live on a place and you can't really move, right? And you can't move all your friends there. How do you incorporate whoever you actually live with into a thing? Or are there limits to it?
There are limits. Like
Yeah.
I if you don't believe the same things about
Right.
faith and philosophy, there are some serious limits. That doesn't mean it's impossible. That doesn't mean you can't have good relationships with your neighbors.
Right.
You can go to a Diwali party and have fun, but am I gonna let my kids go have a sleepover at people that I'm not sure have the same beliefs about, say, at what age is sexual contact appropriate?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And those are culturally informed things. So if we're not on the same page, there's going to be limits to how deep that relationship can go. So yeah, so I know that's kind of a crap answer, but
no, it's fine.
That's what I believe here.
We must stop. What I'm gathering is we must stop Diwali. No.
Well, no. You can still go to Diwali party. It's fine.
We must stamp out Diwali.
You just have to temper your expectations.
Fine, but Diwali.
You gotta temper your expectations as to how culturally rich your life is gonna be if you're spending all your time with people who have different faith and philosophical beliefs than you. Okay. And so you have fun together, you work on community projects together. Okay. Go help your neighbor dig his garden. Okay. Or whatever. Create art with and for each other. So if I sit down to write a short story, for example, and I think, okay, how can I get this? What can I write that'll get the most sales on Amazon? My short story is going to be terrible.
You're right.
Necessarily, because I'm not writing it to a culture that I understand or that really even exists. Okay, you're trying to write it for everybody. Don't do that. Write your short story for your neighbors.
Which is why movies are not very good these days.
Exactly.
They're trying to write it for everybody.
They have no cultural underpinning. Yeah. So write it for the people of your culture. Write it for your neighbor. Write it for your children. For your neighbor's children.
Write no story for people. Write it for the great sky.
What? Okay.
That was
the great sky was not at my last barbecue.
A Zen master said that once. Write no story for people.
Okay.
Write it for the great sky.
I
don't know what that means, but I always enjoyed saying it after I heard it. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I write everything for the great sky.
I think he was full of it.
Maybe so, but it was great.
So, and I realize how impractical this stuff is, but it's only impractical because there's a really huge weight of technocratic nomadic living that has been forced upon all of us. And that's the thing that's impractical. What I'm talking about really in terms of human history and good human living, my stuff is the practical stuff. It's go live in Seattle and work in an Amazon pod. That's the impractical thing for humanity.
Yes.
So that was my little treatise on culture.
Agreed. Right.
If you would like to read more on this topic, I'll recommend Richard M. Weaver, who did some fantastic work, including a book called Visions of Order, where he talks all about culture, the lack thereof, how to make it, what's it good for, all that sort of stuff. Very good book.
My mic just fell over. I had to.
That's okay.
That was a thud sound.
I'll fix it in post.
Yeah, everything gets fixed in post.
Yep.
I just like most of what I say, listeners, actually, I don't even say. He just puts it in post somehow. Yeah. It's amazing.
Your psyche is highly edited by my post-production practices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So build a culture, stamp out Diwali. And you got to live with like-minded folks.
You do. If you don't, you're missing out on a huge chunk of good living.
Yeah, I had an interesting childhood that I think doesn't exist much anymore because I went to this school where we all went through K through 12 together, and basically no one ever moved. Mm-hmm. And so I was with the same people, the same class for like 12, 13 years or whatever, from kindergarten till graduation.
That's very rare today.
It's very rare. Yeah. And we definitely had our inside inside jokes and knowledge
Yeah.
for sure. Because it was like, where you hit junior year of high school and you had memories with each other back to second grade.
Yeah. No, and if you have this, you'll fight for it. That's the other thing is my employer tried to move me this year.
Uh-huh.
And I thought I would like a move, but then when it really came down to it, I realized what I had, and I fought to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord provided that, and so I was able to stay and continue.
Where were you going to be moved to? Don't specify. Just
another southern state.
Okay.
But I'd have to start all over on my little subculture.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to give that up. I didn't want to give that up.
Right.
Thankfully, I didn't.
Good. Oh.
So I think it's time for our weirdness.
I ain't afraid of no ghost.
Don't be afraid, man.
Now this one today. I was so thinking about culture. I almost forgot that I was supposed to talk about this. That's how you caught me off guard. But yes, I have a very good one today, because there's been a lot of stuff recently.
Uh-huh.
Like, do you remember, like, in the ancient times, like 4 months ago, when the big thing was like, you got to believe our intelligence community?
Yeah.
You must say that you believe the intelligence community.
Well, they've taken some big hit. They've taken some hits to their confidence.
You must say you believe and then there was the whole the Russiagate thing and all that.
Right.
And there's this meme going around that there are crisis actors and the FBI puts people at protests to make them look bad and stuff.
Or gives them bombs.
Or that they're actually responsible for ISIS and school shooters. And people are like, nah, that's all crazy. I'm going to tell you a story today that's 100% real that makes all that seem completely vanilla.
All right.
We're going to go down a rabbit hole of what the government intelligence agencies actually do that is going to blow your mind, and also connect with something we talked about previously, and also have an element of the unexplained.
Cool.
Okay. This is from Greg Bishop's great book, and I love Greg. I mentioned Greg before. Greg is probably the best paranormal researcher around today, because Greg operates from a place of basically zero ego. He's like, he'll say something, and then like a year later, he'll be like, "Oh, that was crap. I discovered something new, and all of that was nonsense."
Fantastic.
And he just throws it away, And
yeah.
It's great. He also sells a great T-shirt that has a little Bigfoot on it, a little UFO, and then like a little psi symbol for psychic things.
Mm-hmm.
And at the bottom it says "repeatable, just not on demand."
Nice.
I thought it was great, because if people are like, "Well, why can't you do it in a lab? Why isn't it repeatable?" And he's like, "It is repeatable. I just don't know how to make it happen." But people see Bigfoots all the time. Anyway, he wrote this book called Project Beta. Which is Project Beta, how the U.S. government started an alien invasion. Right?
Wow.
Yes, and it's fantastic. And this came out a long time ago. I mean, it's like 15 years ago, but it is not as well known as it should be or talked about.
Mm-hmm.
For reasons I think that will become clear. But I felt that we needed to know about it. So I'm going to introduce to you. This happened in the year 1980, but it also extended through the 1980s in general, the whole decade.
Okay.
But I want to introduce to you three characters. Paul Benowitz. Yes. Gabe Valdez.
I'm going to write these down.
Yeah. Paul Benowitz, Gabe Valdez, and Myrna Hansen. Now, Paul Benowitz was a physicist, and he did his master's degree, and he was pursuing his doctorate degree. But while he was doing his doctorate degree, he also opened a company called Thunder Scientific. And Thunder Scientific got to be so successful that he had no time to finish his doctorate degree because he was managing his company. So he let that slide. But he was a really smart guy, and Thunder Scientific made new and novel temperature and pressure and other environmental sensor components for military aircraft and for NASA.
Cool.
Okay. So he started this from scratch. Very smart fellow. And Thunder Scientific's building was and still is, because the company is still there and run by his sons, who I think are named James Benowitz or John or something like that. Some very, it was all the apostles, Paul, James, whatever. So Paul Benowitz, he opens Thunder Scientific right on the doorstep of Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, so Paul Benowitz, he opens this space, and I mean right on the doorstep. Like, you go up there, here's the entrance to the base, and right next to the entrance to the base sign is a sign that says Thunder Scientific with a little arrow pointing, right? And his house is likewise, because Kirtland sort of wraps around.
Mm-hmm.
His house is also right next to the base. Like, Thunder Scientific shares a wall with the Air Force Base, and Paul Benowitz's home shares one with the Air Force Base.
Awesome. This guy knew what he wanted to do and did it.
Right. So that's where he is. He's working with these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, well, I'm just going to put my company right there. Now, Paul Benowitz, as again, very smart fellow, technical fellow, perhaps a little bit kooky, perhaps a little bit schizo.
Many are.
Yeah. So anyway, Paul sitting on his balcony next to the Air Force Base, looking out over the mountains, specifically one Monzano Mountain, which is the mountain that is the big one inside the base.
Mm-hmm.
He spends a lot of his time in the late 70s sitting on his balcony at night, looking at strange lights in the sky floating over the Air Force Base. And for better or worse, for whatever reason, he becomes convinced that these are alien interference with the United States government. Now, what leads him to conclude this, we shall never know. He took off his he took a lot of video, like a lot of video and a lot of pictures, and most of them, when he would tell people about him, he'd be like, "See, look at that! Do you see the alien?" And people are like, it just looks like the sky. I don't know. What do you say? But every now and then one of them would be like, well, that is something weird in there. There'd be like some weird colored light flying through the sky, whatever. And he would say that he see things like float up from the ground in the Air Force Base and come back down, and like multicolored lights dancing in the sky or whatever. So anyway, that's Paul Benowitz. He was a physicist who started a company, worked a lot with NASA and the Air Force Base, and for whatever reason, became convinced of an alien conspiracy operating within the U.S. government.
Okay.
Got really into the UFO scene. All right, now we'll introduce Gabe Valdez. Gabe Valdez was a police officer in New Mexico who became the New Mexican. He's still alive, by the way. He sort of became the New Mexican Fox Mulder from the X-Files.
Okay.
Because this was at the peak of the cattle mutilations, which we talked about in an earlier show.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time in the 80s, there are, especially in New Mexico, there are all these ranchers reporting like, hey, I went out last night and I found some of my cows dead, and like their anuses have been cut out and their tongues removed and their eyes, and very surgically done, and it doesn't look like an animal. What is going on? And mostly the police were like, I don't know, that's weird, man. Who knows? That was the standard police response was like, got me. I don't know. But Gabe was very interested in this, and he took it upon himself to, even outside of his normal hours, go out to these ranchers and look, and investigate. Mm-hmm. And he went all over New Mexico investigating cattle mutilations. And one night, he even claims with a partner to have cornered one of these so-called UFOs in the act of abducting a cow to mutilate it. And he corners it in a field, and he says the light of the UFO blinked off, and then he heard something go over his head that sounded like a tractor, and then it was gone. Which doesn't sound very alien, by the way. No,
tractors are kind of rattle-trappy.
That sounds very like a human something.
Mm-hmm.
And Gabe, he kept a quote unquote scrapbook, which is he kept boxes of stuff that he found at these cattle mutilation things, and he shows them to people. He found like gas masks. He found radar chaff, which is the stuff that they spit out of the back of jets to confuse missiles if they're coming at your, a heat-seeking missile coming at you. You throw out a bunch of metal chaff, and then it confuses the missile. Right. He found some of that stuffed in cows' mouths sometimes.
Ooh.
Strange. He would find like paper envelopes, and he had a Geiger counter, and he would pick up elevated levels of radiation and stuff. And so he's like, what is going on? And Gabe Valdez, I mentioned in the cattle mutilation show that Senator Schmidt of New Mexico got so into this that he was one of the senators there, that he was so worried about this, and he had so many ranchers calling him about this, that he had this conference about cattle mutilations. And various government people went, and media, and two people that went were Gabe Valdez and Paul Benowitz, and they met at this conference.
Okay.
And Gabe feels like Paul is a very smart fella that really can help him with this. So he files his number away. He keeps his business card, right?
All right.
And so then Myrna Hansen happens. And Myrna gets in touch with Gabe. So what happened with Myrna Hansen was she was I think she was 22, 21, young lady. Mm-hmm. No, she must have been a little older because her son was like 8. So she must have been in her mid-20s or something. She had a child young, single mom, 8-year-old son. And she's driving home to New Mexico from Oklahoma. And she crosses the border, and then she says she sort of stops because in the middle of the night, she sees what she described as, quote, an ovoid object, a large one, and a smaller triangular object next to it floating over a field.
Ooh.
And she saw a cow being sucked up into it by what we would call a tractor beam. A bright light shining over this field. And then a bright light shines over her car, and she doesn't remember anything. And then the next thing she knows, she's in her car, almost home. And she was supposed to get home about 9:00, but she gets home and she looks at the clock and it's 1 a.m.
Whoa.
She has missing time. And so she calls up the police department there in New Mexico, I think it's northern New Mexico, in hysterics. And she's just rambling about, there's a cow and it was up in the sky, and then I don't know what happened, and there was so many of them and lights, and she's just insane. Mm-hmm. And the guy on the phone, the staff sergeant who takes the call, he just all he hears is cattle, and he says, this is another one of those things. Mm-hmm. She's inconsolable, but he calls Gabe. He says, Gabe, I got another lady for you to talk to. So Gabe goes out there. Her story is very strange, and he puts her in his squad car and drives her like 250 miles to Paul Benowitz's house. Oh, where they, because for some reason Gabe has it in his mind that Paul is some sort of expert. Okay, maybe Paul was. Mm-hmm. And they go down there and they talk for like 2 days. Gabe for somehow leaves her there, and her son travels with her. Mm-hmm. Right, and she stays in the Benowitz's house with Paul and his wife and their children. And he goes back to do policing work, and comes back and get her later. But Paul has some days where he's just talking to her about this stuff, and Paul decides that he needs a professional psychiatrist to come in. Okay. And really analyze this scenario. So he gets a psychiatrist through APRO, which is a defunct UFO organization. It was the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization at APRO. And this guy is a great name, Leo Sprinkle. Dr. Leo Sprinkle. Which just really gives it that, nonsense edge.
Sounds kind of magical,
Yeah. So Dr. Sprinkle comes in. Now, Dr. Sprinkle has done a lot of work with people that supposedly had UFO contact and sort of psychoanalyzing them, okay? So, but by the time Sprinkle gets there, I'll skip that for a minute. But anyway, so Sprinkle gets there and he does a hypnotic regression, because this was a standard thing in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. And some people still do it, although the legitimacy of hypnosis as a memory recall technique is currently in a lot of doubt. Yeah. But It was not at this time. And so he regresses her. He does this hypnotic regression. And Mira describes this underground base. She describes being taken aboard a ship and like stripped naked and given a medical examination. And she describes seeing in this underground base these vats floating with human body parts and animal body parts.
Oh.
Just sort of. And then right at the middle of it, she sits straight up off the seat. She just bolts right up and says, "Where is Roswell, New Mexico?" And that's how it ends.
Ooh.
Now, here's the thing. No one knew about Roswell at this point. Now, Roswell had happened, but it was not in the popular consciousness. The first book hadn't even been written about it. In fact, it wasn't written until later that year. So it wasn't like she knew about Roswell, New Mexico. And Paul and Sprinkle didn't know about Roswell because they just sort of, that's just sort of an offhanded thing in his notes of what she's saying. He's recording what she's saying, and then they never bring it up again. They never talk about it. Like the Roswell connection doesn't register with these guys at all. So that is the one thing you're like, well, that's like, seems like a genuine weirdness.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't something they would have thrown in there to fake it because it wasn't a thing at the time. Right. So anyway, Leo Sprinkle leaves and Myrna leaves. And then sometime later, Myrna comes back because she feels like she needs to explore this trauma some more. So she comes back to Paul's house and Paul invites Leo back out there. And I think Sprinkle lived in Colorado or something. Okay. And so he flies him down on his dime. And that's when it starts to get weird. Sprinkle says, when I knocked on the door this time, the demeanor was completely different. Paul opens the door hurriedly. He's like, "Get inside now." And he answers the door with a rifle in one hand and a pistol on his hip. Whoa. And he says, "The aliens might come storming over the fence any minute." So now you're going to see why this had happened. Okay. So Paul, who was a very charismatic fellow, has imparted his paranoia onto Myrna at this point. Okay. Because he spent a lot of time talking with her. And Leo doesn't want to do the thing because he feels the well has been poisoned. He doesn't want to hypnotically regress her. But he also feels a little threatened by Paul. So he does sort of a quick sort of, halfway thing. Okay. Right. And but this time it's not good enough to like do a normal regression because Paul has become convinced and has convinced Myrna that she is being influenced by alien rays from space that are preventing her from accessing her full memories of that night and what happened. Whoa. And so Paul, using a series of things that seem really below his technical pay grade for what he'd accomplished elsewhere in his life with his company, has all these just makeshift jerry-rigged contraptions to prevent the alien rays from interacting with Myrna. Okay. And it gets very strange. Like he plugs in a wire to the ground of an outlet and makes a circle around Myrna's body with it on the ground. He makes her sit in a car to do the hypnosis and lines all the windows with aluminum foil. Paul basically invents the tinfoil hat at this point. I was wondering. Okay. That's not an exaggeration. He doesn't use a hat, but he does go so far as to line an umbrella with aluminum foil and hold it over her head. Awesome. We're talking somehow he got access to hospitals and would like take her into X-ray lead lined rooms. And he became convinced and subsequently convinced Myrna that she had some sort of alien implant that they had to block the signals from interacting that was basically controlling her whole body, all of her notions, all of her feelings, and all of her ability to control memory. So Myrna at this point feels that she is totally under the control of alien rays. Poor Myrna. And Benowitz thinks the aliens are going to invade at any moment to capture him. And Leo wants to get the heck out of there. And so actually, Paul throws Leo out because Paul does not feel that Leo is being sufficiently paranoid. Right.
You got to have standards.
You have to have your standards. And so Paul doesn't feel that he's being sufficiently paranoid. And so he hires this other fellow instead. Well, not hire is a big word. He gets this other psychiatrist out there, Dr. James Harder rather.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one that did the hypnotic regression on the first UFO abductee in popular consciousness, which was Travis Walton.
Okay.
It's the Travis Walton case we can go into another time, but he gets him in there, and Harder is totally on board with all the weird stuff, like wrapping ourselves in aluminum foil, sitting in a car for 7 hours, driving around to avoid the rays. He's like, yeah, this is great. Right?
Wow.
Okay. So that's what's going on near this Air Force base. And I should say that Kirtland Air Force Base, was made in 1947, specifically chosen because of that mountain that he would watch the lights go over from his balcony, Monsanto Mountain. Monsanto Mountain was chosen as a place to store nuclear weapons components, and airplane and aircraft components in the 1940s, just after the nuclear bombs.
So what, did they build a bunker in the mountain or something?
Right. There really is an underground base full of tunnels in this mountain. Right. There 100% is an actual underground base. Now, I should say that while all this is going on with Paul, the base itself and the people on it are not immune to weirdness.
Mm-hmm.
That goes on for a long time. Now, the most telling example was in the 1990s, which is, I know, after this, but it's just sort of the most poignant example of the stuff that would happen at this base. So this base is having like all sorts of very weird things going on it. Like there was in 1990 there was a complaint form filed by 2 Air Force guards, right, on August 8th and 11th, and it says it's an official Air Force documentation. The complaint form says, "We saw 2 objects come flying in, and one landed on the ground. One guard approached the landed object. I was thinking at first it was a helicopter, but as I got closer and I tried to radio for backup, I found my radio was not working. I then noticed the object was not a helicopter, but some kind of ovoid object. Again, ovoid object, just like Myrna saw. I then pulled my shotgun on it, demanding to know who was there, and it immediately shot up in the air and took off. And then 2 days later, all of the radar in Albuquerque, civilian and military, turns off for most of the day. And all the planes have to land manually, just talking them in. It's a mess. And it comes back on at 10 p.m. that night with no explanation. And this is not just like wild. This is in the Albuquerque logbooks of the air traffic controllers, right? You know, this is all something turned off all the radar.
Okay.
Very strange. And this kind of stuff is going on there in around this Air Force base all the time, even around, Benowitz's time. This sort of strange, like, people seeing stuff. Benowitz isn't the only one. All right. So, Paul is a very patriotic American. He's a boomer.
Mm-hmm.
He loves America. He makes components for America's military. And he is genuinely paranoid. And so he takes all of his evidence to the Air Force and says, look, aliens are in your base. And the Air Force doesn't really care about that. Mm-hmm. But they do notice this guy, Paul, has built a wild array of antennas, very sharp, very, very short exposure cameras, mm-hmm. and is pointing them all at our base all the time, recording all we're doing on our top secret base. So the Air Force like listens to him on the phone and they say, well, this sounds sort of weird. Send someone out there. So they go to his house, and the guy that goes to his house is this guy named Colonel Richard Doty, who Doty plays a big thing in UFO lore. But
okay.
Doty goes to his house and he says, he sees all these antennas, and Paul shows him like, look, I've been recording electromagnetic radiation coming off your base for like a year, and I've decoded some messages, and I'm in the process of decoding it. And Doty realizes that this crazy guy is actually in the process of decoding all their cryptid messages that they've been sending out from the base
Wow.
for ages, and he's actually getting some of it right. And he hasn't put all the pieces together yet, but it's like there. And he's also got all these photographs, like of the base at like 1/1000th of a second exposure. And when you do that, you can see these like laser beams coming up sometimes.
Ooh.
And stuff. And so the Air Force is like, this guy is a security threat because he's taking some data of what we're doing because he thinks it's aliens. Okay, so and it goes so far, they want to make sure so what they do is say, yeah, Paul, why don't you come to the base and give us a presentation about your research? And so he does. He goes to the base and a bunch of people are there. And they attend his meeting, and then they leave thinking, okay, this could be a problem. Now you would think that what you would do is you just tell Paul to cut it out, stop doing that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, but that is not what they do, because the Air Force realizes the Air Force has this it's basically like the Air Force Secret Police or the Air Force FBI. It's the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, AFOSI.
Okay. Let me just stop and ask a question here. I get the feeling like an investigative service, it's about to take a mentally disturbed person and set them off on a very self-destructive path of deception with bad info. And it's really going to hurt this person and maybe a lot of other people.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to do it rather than doing the right thing of just saying, hey,
cut it out.
You need to stop that for national security reasons, please.
Yes.
Am I anywhere in the neighborhood?
Oh, you're so in the neighborhood. So many people are going to get hurt.
Please continue.
But here's their reasoning, right? And it sort of makes some sense when you think about it, because the Air Force said, well, we haven't been paying attention to this, but maybe we should be paying attention to these weird UFO people, because if even a small fraction of them are as autistically observing all of our bases as this guy, they're unwitting spies for the Soviets or whatever, because they're just going to publish all this stuff.
Right.
Like, look at all these pictures of 1 millisecond exposures that we took over the Air Force Base. See these weird things flying around? And they're going to be like, well, there's our experimental spacecraft right in a photo for everyone to see. And so the intelligence community says, well, rather than tell Benowitz to cut it out, let's go on a fishing expedition. Let's try to find some more of these people and just see if we can identify who is maybe a threat. So, enter another character named Bill Moore. Bill Moore. Okay. Now, I should say that as part of this, before I talk about Bill Moore, as part of the fishing expedition, they send out this letter, the Air Force, Special Investigations. They send out this letter that to APRO and other UFO agencies, claiming to be from an Air Force officer named Craig Weitzel. And Craig Weitzel says in this letter, he says, look, while I was on patrol, I saw a UFO. It landed, and I took pictures of it. But then somebody came dressed all in black the next day and took my pictures away from them and told me not to talk about it. The Air Force just conjured this up out of thin air.
So the Air Force created the Men in Black as a moment.
Well, no, because the Men in Black existed before this, but they'd obviously done some research and they used this meme of the Men in Black, right? Okay. And they put this out there, and a lot of the UFO community, because they're unscrupulous, just ran with it, like yeah. But Bill Moore, who was a ufologist at the time, and he was actually the guy who had just finished writing the book on Roswell, which I mentioned was not out yet. He looks into this, and he actually goes up to he finds Craig Weitzel on the base, and he asks him about it. And Craig Weitzel says, well, yeah, I don't know who wrote that letter. It wasn't me, but I did see a UFO, but it didn't land on the ground or anything. It just flew around, and I didn't get any pictures of it.
Sumo, pause for a second.
I don't know what's happening, but I'm not going to follow this any further. Yeah.
Can you go? Your signal's no good. Can you go back and start introduce Craig Weitzel again and to cut off your cut off your video?
Yeah.
Just,
so cut off my video. Hold on. How do I do that?
Just hit the little camera thing. The little camera button next to this to the
Is
hand
that
up
better?
button. Probably.
How's
We'll give it a second to catch up here. But yeah,
Okay.
I think that's going to be better. Okay, so introduce Craig Weitzel again. Yeah, let's try it again.
Okay. So the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, as part of this fishing operation, let's ignore Bill Moore for just a minute. They put out a letter, and they send it to all the UFO organizations, APRO and MUFON and everything, and they say it's from an officer named Craig Weitzel. And in this letter, they say it's written from the perspective of Craig, and they say, he says, I was an officer on patrol in New Mexico around the base there, and while out on patrol, I saw a UFO. It landed, and I took pictures of it. But then the next day, some man in black came and took the pictures away and told me not to talk about it. But I bravely am coming forward and asking APRO and the MUFON for help. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So now the Air Force did not invent the Men in Black thing. That had been around for a while, but they were definitely running on that meme.
Okay.
Right? They done their research in the UFO organization, and they used that as a meme. Okay. So most UFO researchers, because they're unscrupulous, they just ran with it. And they're like, yeah, this is an interesting story. But Bill Moore, who was the guy who wrote the first book on Roswell and had just finished it, as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't out published yet.
Okay.
He just finished it. He looks into this, and he goes, and he rather than just accept it whole cloth, he goes and he finds Craig Weitzel on the base, and he says, was any of this true? And Craig says, well, I don't know who sent that letter. It wasn't me. I did see a UFO, but it didn't land, and I didn't get any pictures of it.
So wait, there was a real Craig Weitzel, but he didn't write the letter.
Right.
Oh.
Right, and what you're going to find is all of this stuff is lies mixed with truth. That's how the disinformation campaign goes. So Bill Moore says, well, I don't know about this letter. It's weird. I'm not going to run with it, but I couldn't confirm it, right? Okay, so then Bill Moore is out. His book, the Roswell Incident, comes out. First book on Roswell. And he's out on a tour for his book, and he's doing radio shows around the country, right? So he's doing one of these radio shows, I think out in Texas, and he gets a phone. It finishes up. He goes out into the lobby, and he gets a phone call. And they say, Mr. Moore, Mr. Bill Moore, there's a phone call for you. He says, I wonder who thinks I'm here. Anyway, he goes and he asks, he says, who's this? Is this Bill Moore? Yes. We think you're the only one that knows what they're talking about. Who is this? Do you have time to meet with us? No, not right now. I've got to leave for Albuquerque. I have another show to do there. And the people hang up. They just hang up.
Okay.
And so he says, that was strange. So then he goes to Albuquerque, which is where Kirtland, that base is, right? He goes to Albuquerque. He does the radio show. And then as he's leaving, he gets another phone call in the lobby. Same guy, same people. He says, do you have time to meet with us? And this time Bill says, okay, sure. So the person on the phone says, we're going to meet at this restaurant. And the guy says, I'll be wearing a red tie. So Bill Moore gets there to the restaurant early because he's trying to play spy. And he gets to the restaurant early to try and spot Red Tie before Red Tie spots him. But as he's sitting there, he hears a knock at the window. And he looks over, and there's a red tie hanging down. And he rolls down the window. He's like, Mr. Moore, I believe we have a meeting. And it turns out Red Tie was Colonel Doty.
Okay.
Who we've already talked about, had his first encounter with Paul Benowitz. And so they tell Bill Moore, they said, look, based on our encounters with Paul Benowitz, we've realized these UFO people may be a security threat, poking around with their radar dishes and stuff. And look, we put out this fishing expedition, and you were the only one that passed the test and didn't just run with it whole cloth. So we want you to be an Air Force asset, a security asset.
Wow.
And Bill Moore says, me? He said, yeah. And if you will do this, we will give you access to secret documents regarding UFOs that no other UFO researcher has ever gotten.
Wow.
And Bill Moore is like, I mean, okay, I'll try it. And so they go, this is a real thing. They go so far as to give Bill Moore spy training, like how to lose a tail, how to follow people, how to conceal his messages. Right.
Whoa. Okay.
All right. So they give Bill Moore some spy training, and then in exchange for this, the first thing he gets, is some weird lead. They give him some documentation, and he goes and investigates, and he can't find hide nor hair of any of the people in this document.
Mm-hmm.
And so the third meeting, he goes back to meet Doty, and he says, well, like what is this some sort of game? What kind of evidence am I getting here? You know, and they're like, see, well, now you passed the test the second time.
Oh, because he didn't like make up something to fit.
Right.
Okay.
They said, now we really trust you. We believe that you're like, we put you through the ringer twice. The next documents you get are going to be for real. Okay. And they do give him some very strange documents. Like they give him, again, before anyone's talking about Area 51, because this is people who just talked about Roswell, they give him a map of Area 51 from the air. And it's a satellite map and air map and airplane photograph map, and it has stuff circled on it like Saucer Mesa, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And Colonel Doty says, yeah, that's where we keep the saucers, and they test fly them. And he's like, well, I don't have any way to verify this. I can't get on the base, whatever. I'll just hang on to it. He also gives them something they can verify. He can verify, which is the first account of MJ-12. Which is a huge thing in the UFO community. Okay. It stands for the Majestic 12. The Majestic 12. The Majestic 12 were a group convened by Truman to control how top secret information, specifically relating to UFOs, was released to the public.
Oh, okay.
He gives Bill Moore a list of who's on MJ-12. And he does his research, and he looks through, and he says, yeah, all these 12 people are very connected in this very strange way, you know. And so... And so Bill Moore goes through all this for like a decade. He's acting as an informant in the UFO community to the Air Force. And it's contact with the Air Force. The Air Force just breaks contact with him in the late 80s, and they don't say anything else anymore. And Bill Moore was never told not to talk about this stuff like after the fact, so he did. And at a MUFON conference, which is the Mutual UFO Network in 1989, Bill stood up and he told everyone what happened. It's like, I've been a spy for the Air Force and various other government agencies spying on you people. And I want to tell you about what happened with Paul Benowitz. And this causes Bishop, the guy that wrote this book, Project Beta, was at this conference, and he said it was hysteria. Everyone felt like they'd been betrayed and backstabbed. This guy was a double agent, and he was a double agent.
Yeah.
And so that's what prompted Bishop to write this book. And so anyway, Bill Moore says that he had been, is what Colonel Doty told him, is that when they went in there and they saw all the things that Paul Benowitz was doing to record their base, so Paul Benowitz had built this computer. Remember how he got the EM radiation coming off the thing and was decoding it? He had built a computer, which was not a thing in the 1980s. You didn't have a personal computer in 1980, but he built a computer to decode these messages. And so the Air Force said, this is great. But you know what? Let us help you along. It's a little slow. We'll give you our own decoding computer that we use. And they programmed this computer that they'd given him with software that would translate the code into the exact messages that they wanted him to hear.
Oh, okay.
All right. And
why would they give him this? Under what pretense did they give him this computer? Like, what did they tell Paul?
They said they said we think you're onto something. We think the aliens are interfering with our base, and we need your help.
Okay.
Just feeding his paranoia.
Sure.
Just straight feeding. And so there was that, but also one of the things, so there was all this stuff that he's looking at. But also strangely, one of the things is that they learned that Myrna, the lady that had her abduction, when she was in her hypnotic regression, she described apparently exactly what the interior base of that mountain on the base looked like. The inner chambers.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, how did that, what? We got to know what is going on with this guy, right? We got to figure this out. So they give him all this equipment, and they say, yeah, we're going to help you out. And one of the things they learned is that Myrna thought, she described this underground base perfectly, but she thought it was somewhere in North New Mexico, specifically around a town named Dulce. Now, that's incorrect. The base is actually there in Albuquerque, but the Air Force said, oh, Dulce, great. Okay, perfect. Let's go see. And so what Colonel Doty had done is there's a mesa in Dulce, a big high cliff. And the Air Force got helicopters, and they picked up a bunch of Jeeps and like hangars, and I mean like little portable hangars and aircraft parts and trailers, and they airlifted them up onto this mesa and like sort of arranged them around to look like a base.
Okay.
And then they got Paul Benowitz in a helicopter and flew him over, and they said, "You're right, Paul. Look, there's a base." And Paul is like, "I am right. There is a base. It's aliens. The aliens are helping some faction of the U.S. government. Look there." Myrna was exactly correct. And this serves as, again, why didn't they just tell him to cut it out? Right?
Right.
But instead, they take his autism and focus it off of their base onto this mesa in the middle of nowhere. And it works because Paul becomes obsessed with this place. Paul is also an amateur pilot, by the way, and he would get up in his plane and spend days out of every week flying around. Like, his business is in the hands of other people now. His employees are running it, and he is focused 100% on uncovering the alien cover-up. And he's flying over this fake base in the middle of Arizona.
So they leave everything set up there. They just leave it all. They leave all that stuff there.
Yeah.
For Paul to obsess over.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yes. They leave the stuff there for Paul to obsess over. Right? This is the story of how the United States government abused a man with schizophrenia. But so they leave all this stuff out there, and Paul is going crazy about it, taking photos. And here's one of the things, though, is that there was actually something crashed up there in 1985. And we know something crashed up there because Paul has photos of the crash site. Now, a lot of his photos, he claims that he would have photos and he would put them back in his apartment, and that the Air Force would come every day to his house and remove them for security purposes. But he kept a couple of them, and one of them shows not a downed vehicle, but some sort of crash site. Like the trees have been knocked over and all that sort of stuff. Right? And something did apparently crash there, but he didn't have photos of it, but he did make drawings of what he saw on this base. And the drawings that he made, which he claimed was a UFO, was an alien vehicle, look suspiciously like the stealth planes, like the black stealth plane. You remember, that one, the radar-approved plane?
Right. I'm really confused. So maybe a real secret aircraft crashed at the fake base.
Somehow, either they crashed it there on purpose for some further disinformation campaign that I don't understand, or completely serendipitously, an actual secret aircraft crashed on this mesa and Paul had photos of it. One of the two. But Paul draws what looks like basically the stealth fighter before the stealth fighter is public, and he's like, this is in part of his documents, right, that we have now. Okay. So so something is up there. But anyway, Paul does this for like 5 years, and then or 4 years actually, because it's in 1984. He releases the first public draft of what he calls Project Beta. Paul writes up this document called Project Beta. I don't know if there was a Project Alpha. I don't know that anybody knows. But he releases Project Beta. And he sends this letter, this document, out to senators. He sends it to the president. He sends it to the media. He sends it to generals. He sends it to everybody. And in this document, he describes his EM signals he's recording, his movie films, his alien communications, his aerial photographs of the mesa and from his private plane. And Gabe Valdez, remember the police officer? When asked about it, he said, "Yeah, I went over there during this time when he was writing this, and it had gotten weird. Like the Air Force had filled his house with all these computers, and there was like a TV screen that had like a rotating image of an alien's head on it or something that he was supposedly receiving, picking up the signal from the base. And there were these like there were these images of like flying saucers like posted up there that like sort of looked like it or sort of didn't, you know?
So Paul Benowitz is the original guy with the red yarn.
Yes.
Okay.
He's the original Crazy Wall man. But he's not, the thing is, he's not totally crazy because Gabe Valdez says, he told me, he said, "Hey, take your camera, point it up there over the mesa and take a photo." And Gabe's like, "There's nothing there, Paul." He's like, "No, set it on the shortest exposure time." And Gabe does. And when he gets it developed, lo and behold, there is some light streaks coming up from the ground.
Okay.
Right?
Something going on. Yeah.
So he's like, "What's going on?" Anyway, Benowitz releases this project beta from his weird string wall house.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, he sent this to everybody, and enough people take it seriously that like the Air Force has like senators and people in the media saying, "What's going on with this guy? Like, this is a lot of weird." And they say, they said, "Look, it's a matter of national security. We have it under control. Please ignore him." And so they do ignore him. This makes Paul go even further into his paranoia because they must be in on it. Otherwise, they'd be taking it seriously.
Right. Oh, no.
Right.
Oh, man.
Now, the disinformation campaign continues for like I say, like 10 years over the 80s. And the levels it went to are hard to know. Because it gets to the point where I have a suspicion that people in the intelligence community have sort of lost the plot and they don't know who's lying to who anymore. Like they're like, people are operating on things that someone else made up, that they didn't know they made up, that the person they were told didn't know made up.
Okay.
Right. And so they're making lies to cover up things that were originally cover-ups at this point.
Okay.
Because by 1985, Kirtland scientists, Air Force-based scientists at this thing, were actually given misinformation, told that the Air Force was flying joint. Specifically, they were given documents saying the Air Force was flying joint missions with aliens and using ET craft. The aliens were teaching them how to fly.
So this thing took on a life of its own.
It became a mythology that just sort of spiraled out of control. And you say, well, why would they continue to do this? One is the fishing into the UFO community. One is maybe looking for leaks. You know, if you want to find someone that's leaking information, what you do is you feed them false information, and then you see if it gets out. Mm-hmm. And you feed different people different bits of false information. Like you tell one person, "Oh, it happened in California," another person, "Oh, it happened in Tennessee." And then wherever it gets to the papers, if it's from if they say, you know, "We had reports that this happened in Tennessee," you know, it was that guy,
right?
Who's your leak, right? But this is a weird thing to be telling them, like, "Oh yeah, we're flying joint missions with aliens. Hey, all our scientists, I know that you think you're inventing this, but actually it's aliens." You know, it's a weird thing to say.
Yeah. Okay.
And another thing is maybe they just want to muddy the water so much to cover up what they're doing. Like maybe they just want to cover the base in a layer of informational crap, so that any other like Russian spies or Chinese spies can't look through it.
Okay.
I don't know what they're doing, but this spirals out of control. To the point where they start releasing things called like the Aquarius document, which details Project Aquarius, and this is all on official U.S. government paperwork, like letterhead signed by people like colonels and generals and stuff. And that's why it's so convincing. And it's all fake. And Project Aquarius detailed like how the U.S. government had a project with aliens to teach human pilots, and in exchange, the U.S. government was okay with them abducting X many people every year, right? And there's a Project Sigma, which was like how we communicate with aliens, and they make up all these documentations. They're giving it to Paul, and they're saying, "Look, you know, here's the here's what's really going on. See if you can, and they give it. Remember Bill Moore? They tell Bill Moore. They give him the Aquarius document to give to Paul Benowitz, and the Aquarius document outlines their evidence for UFOs. And it says we've discovered that UFOs are happening due to certain films that we've discovered that show them. And when you read the document, you realize the Air Force is talking about Paul Benowitz's own films. So they've written into their mythology Paul's own evidence, right? And Bill Moore realizes what they're doing, and he feels horrible about it. He doesn't want to go do this,
right?
And so they said, look, you got to give this to Paul. Give this Aquarius document to Paul. But Bill Moore doesn't want to do it, and so he delays and delays until finally Colonel Doty calls him up and says, look, do it or the deal's off. You don't get any more documents. So Bill Moore does, but he uses his own spy training that they'd given him against them. And he goes to Thunder Scientific. He says, hey, Paul, I got something to give to you. Let's go to the back room. He goes in there. He turns up the radio as loud as it could possibly be because he's certain that they've bugged at their office. Mm-hmm. And he gets right up into Paul's ear and he whispers, listen, I was told to give this to you. Be careful. Don't believe everything it says. Right?
Oh, man.
And Paul goes, okay. And then completely ignores that and believes it all 100%. Right?
Poor guy, man.
So now after that crash on the Mesa of that secret aircraft, the NSA and the DOD also get involved. And apparently they were talking with Air Force intelligence, and they write Paul letters and they say, hey, look, Paul, you're doing great work. You're discovering the alien conspiracy. Please keep us informed and keep us going. And the NSA actually goes so far as to send Paul a letter from the NSA that says the following. Quote, here, what we know about the aliens is this. Quote, several thousand years ago, a group or, quote, people revealed to us to be the E-bands and originating from the, quote, green planet, created two races of men, Homo sapiens and the Swedes.
What?
And I know. So they invent this whole creation myth that they're feeding Paul Benowitz, who in turn is feeding it to all the rest of the conspiracy psychos.
Okay.
Right? About the aliens having created humankind, and they were called the E-bands, and they made two races, regular humans and Swedish people, who are mostly similar but have some important differences. And all of this stuff is on official documentation. And of course, there are people like that aren't in the know working at all these governments who come across this documentation either on purpose or on accident. Some of them including other major UFO conspiracy theorists who talked about abductions and underground bases and and aliens having created humans 1,000 years ago, and all the stuff that the Air Force just made up whole cloth. Some of these people, including John Lear and Bill English, noted UFO people that produced all these books about this topic and had all these followers, right? And all of this is from the Air Force just making it up for no reason.
Oh, man. Okay, pause for a second. Hang on. So, I've often thought if I was ever president, the first thing I would do was demand a big box full of the documents with aliens and, all the kind of cool secret stuff that we all wonder about. All right. And if a president did that, they would get a box of totally insane made up stuff and maybe some real stuff. And nobody would really be sure what was what after all the years and layers of crap.
Yes. Yes. And that means the disinformation campaign has been successful because no one can tell what actually happened.
And then the president, the president could maybe one day decide, well, the Swedes, they're not like us,
right?
And we should probably wipe them out. And he would nuke Sweden or something on the basis of. I mean, this is totally bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, it is completely insane, and that's just scratching the surface of it. But so then you say, like, well, what else is just made up whole cloth? I mean, if you think the feds aren't willing to manipulate people into like becoming terrorists or school shooters or whatever, they may not be doing it on purpose, but they are driving people like Paul into insanities, right? And like then you start thinking like, is the flat Earth hysteria and the conspiracy, is that some sort of campaign to cover up a secret base in Antarctica? Maybe is that like we've got a secret base in Antarctica, people are poking around. Let's confuse it with them saying that let's make them look stupid and say the Earth is flat, or who knows? Like any of the stuff that comes out that people talk about that is even real, because they will go to such levels to invent alien races and mythologies and the E-bands. But anyway, it got so bad that Paul was eventually institutionalized. He was like, he was eventually like, he'd be eating his food and he wouldn't touch his food. He'd just smoke 10 cigarettes and be shaking and stuff. And his family finally put him away. And he was sick on and on for the rest of his life, both mentally and physically. And apparently Colonel Doty went to visit him one time when he was in the hospital. And because they'd become sort of like, to the degree that a psychopath like Doty can become a friend, they become sort of friends. And Doty was concerned about him. And later, toward the end of Paul's life, he says, look, I got to come clean. Most of what we told you, it wasn't true. And Benowitz responded, sitting in his bed, no, it wasn't. It was true. And that's how far gone he was. Like his mind
he just couldn't
was
let it go.
Completely broken. He couldn't go. But the thing is, what did happen to Myrna?
Right.
Like she was.
How did she know
on this?
How did she know what the inside of the base looked like?
How'd she know what the inside of the base looked like? What did happen? Something happened to her where she lost 3 hours, and she just called up the police at random before anyone had heard of Paul Benowitz, before the Air Force was aware of Paul Benowitz. She called up the police department at random saying she had this experience in the sky. And then when she was hypnotically regressed, she described this abduction scenario to Leo Sprinkle that, by the way, Leo Sprinkle had another patient describe the exact same thing 2 months before. A lady named Judy had described driving and a light coming over her and then seeing a cow and then missing time. So something strange happened to Myrna and to Judy, and then that precipitated all these fake strange things.
Right.
And I should say, going back, that one of the great things I learned about Gabe is Gabe Valdez. He actually organized an experiment with some scientists about these cows at one point, where they ran them through a chute, like a chute where they line them up for shots and stuff.
Yeah.
And in the chute they had UV lights and black lights overhead. Mm-hmm. And Gabe said when some of the cows would go under them, someone had smeared like phosphorescent paint on the back of these cows, like marking them.
Ooh.
So who knows what's going on? Like or what? And the cow mutilation stuff still sometimes happens. Who knows why? But like 90%, not 90, let's say 70% of like the stuff that you saw on the X-Files, 70% of the UFO lore was just manufactured whole cloth out of this original conspiracy to fool a schizophrenic man into who knows what, for why. But that's the case of Paul Benowitz, and that's Project Beta, and that's why you should not trust your local spook.
So, you hear people say don't talk to the feds under any circumstances. And this is why.
Right.
Crap like this. What they did to Paul Benowitz, that's why.
Well, you maybe can talk to them, but just be like, hey, anything you guys say
right.
is extremely questionable.
Yeah. Don't you can't trust them. Can't trust them.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. They did give Bill Moore some documents, a lot of which turned out to at least be heavily connected to real life. Now, probably some of it inside there was lies, but there does appear to have been an MJ-12. Right. 12 people that.
But to get it, Bill Moore had to deceive and betray everybody.
Yes, exactly.
It cost him his soul. I mean, in a sense,
Right. Yeah, and I think Bill Moore partly went public at the MUFON conference in 1989, where he was shouted down as a double agent as sort of his penance.
Yeah,
he wanted to clear that off his conscience.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did. Yeah.
So because he helped contribute to Paul Benowitz going absolutely insane.
You gotta confess your sin if you want to get free of it.
Yeah, and so that's when I think about you see these like school shooters and they were like in contact with the feds, and that we did have some hand in making ISIS.
Yeah, Timothy McVeigh and.
Yeah. How much of this weird stuff that happens is just the spooks spinning this web of deception so hard?
Right. Well, what
I don't know.
What if Paul Benowitz decided that it was on him to go kill the aliens or whatever and stop this thing? And what if he had put a bomb in a truck or something?
Exactly. And
would the Air Force have come out and said, "Yeah, sorry guys, we sort of spun up this crazy guy and set him loose, and now a bunch of people are dead"? No, they wouldn't have copped to that.
No, they would not both to cover their own butts, but also to not reveal the national security secrets.
Right.
You can justify anything with national security.
This story, this Project Beta segment was amazing and infuriating.
I know. But yeah. Greg Bishop actually, when he was doing the book, he went to go interview the sons. That Thunder Scientific is still there. It still operates. It's still run by his sons, and the sons understandably wouldn't talk to him about it.
Yeah, I bet not.
They were really not happy with what happened. But yeah, so the moral of the story is, as Greg Bishop put so eloquently, he said, "Don't confuse the authority of the messenger with the truth of the message." And that is very true in all things. Like, just because it's on official government documents,
right,
doesn't mean it's real.
Yep.
Just because, and that so many researchers would have been saved so much time and a lot of paranoia and weird conspiracy theories, and like probably some of the, maybe even Waco wouldn't have happened because these people wouldn't have been driven to these weird ideas because there would be these weird ideas like, oh, we were created by the E-bands. Right. And people were like, that's ridiculous. And they're like, oh, here's official government documentation to back me up. And people are like, because they believe authorities figures. And then when there's like secret documents that conflict with what's said in public, there you go.
Let's just pause and acknowledge the power of creating something that doesn't exist before.
Yeah.
Something fake. You create this lie that somebody else takes as true, and you can destroy people's lives with it.
Absolutely.
When you do that, there's, people think that, humans we don't have the power to create things, and we don't have the power to speak physical things into existence, but the Air Force sure created something powerful.
Yeah, the Air Force largely created the alien invasion that was a hysteria of the 80s, 90s, and even today.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that there aren't aliens. I'm not a big proponent of that myself. It's definitely not to say there aren't UFOs, because I've seen some myself. And it's definitely not, and it doesn't account for what happened to Myrna originally. I don't know what happened to her.
Right.
There's a lot of strange elements in this. And even what was Paul seeing over the base?
Yeah.
Probably experimental aircraft, but who knows?
Yeah.
No,
but I mean, I've had weird things happen to myself.
Maybe they really do have aliens in the base, and they wanted to cover that up by making it look ridiculous.
Yeah. Maybe there's really a base in Antarctica, and they covering it up with the flat Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, but it makes me mad because if somebody has an experience like you have, or like I've had weird experiences too, that if you want to go research it, what you go out there and find is a rat's nest of of lies and maybe some truth, and that you can't disentangle it.
Yeah, that's sort of what makes it fun, though.
I mean, yeah.
it's like because you dive into it and you're like, all right, it's like finding the truth in like this giant web of lies, and you're like, all right, I can decipher this.
But you got
I'm on you.
it takes a pretty rugged mind to be able to survive that. I mean, Paul Benowitz, he wasn't ready for it.
No, he wasn't, and not the same as an intelligent mind, because he was clearly an intelligent man.
Yeah,
he was building his own devices to decode and disencrypt secret government messages, right? He was,
Yeah.
and he built his own computer in the 1980s before personal computers were a thing. Clearly a very intelligent man, but intelligent minds don't necessarily translate into stable minds.
No. And
Right.
being intelligent isn't enough to
Right.
survive in the world.
Yeah. People think only dumb people believe in this weird stuff, but that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of very smart people do, who are also unstable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you just gotta, if you're gonna do this stuff, you gotta be able to stand on your surfboard and not get knocked off by the waves.
That's wild, man. That was a wild segment. That was great.
Greg Bishop is a great guy. Everyone should listen to his podcast, Radio Mysterioso. He used to run a pirate radio station out of Los Angeles back in the day. Radio
Mysterioso. I'm going to check that out. I've never listened to that one.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
So before we close out, I want to tell you about the dream I had last night, and then you can think about it and tell me what it means on the next show.
Okay, hit me.
All right. So I'm standing in my driveway, probably getting ready to do some gardening. My family is around somewhere. I don't really know, but I could just, this is a typical scene of my life. We're all out there gardening. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, I see this tall, portly man in slacks and a white polo shirt, tucked in, leather belt. He's about 6'3", bald, kind of got a beer gut, gregarious sort of looking guy. But I can't really look directly at his face. Mm-hmm. It's just, he's sort of at the periphery of my vision no matter how I try to look at him. Mm-hmm. And I'm instantly overcome with complete terror, and I woke up screaming my lungs out last night. And my wife had to shake me awake. And that's the dream. He was just standing there with a smile on his face. Absolutely horrifying. So, noodle that one. And next week you can maybe tell me if any of our listeners want to take a stab at it. You can
we'll decode that dream.
Hit me up on Twitter.
Okay. Project Beta.
That was it, man. That was great. It was a great show. We'll do it again next time.
Amen.
Comes from China. It comes from China. China.